of Minnesota. And Senator, I just think, well, I don't know, what do you think of this?
I think it's one more example where Donald Trump is using the Justice Department as his private playground, trying to fleece his pockets. He says he'll ultimately give it to charity. Appreciated you asking those questions today. But in the end, this is really part of the pattern, right? He prosecutes his so-called enemies, goes after Comey, goes after Letitia James against the advice of career prosecutors, and then he protects himself and those he considered friends, including, I gotta say weirdly, George Santos, you know, the volleyball champion and Spider-Man producer and major fraudster. He decides to help him out for some reason. Sometimes I think he just does stuff to get attention, this thing. But in the end, the thought that in the middle of this shutdown, when he should be engaged in negotiations and being serious, he decides, well, I'm just going to try to get a bunch of money for myself just to spark things up a little bit, and then I'm going to expect these lawyers that I put in place that have done my bidding so far and have been willing to fire career prosecutors and been willing to do my bidding in every single way, including dismissing the case against Eric Adams. Well, now they're going to do it again, but this time they're going to give me $230 million. That's exactly what's going on.
What would you say to someone who might look at this and say, well, he is a former federal defendant and he has the same rights as anyone else to file for damages against charges made against him? What would you say to that?
As your legal experts just pointed out, these are for other kinds of cases. When someone, falls in front of a government building and sues. This is cases that were brought when he was a private citizen, as they pointed out, dismissed because he became president of the United States. I don't think there's any merit to him, but he's going to just see if his puppets that he put in that Justice Department are going to perform for him. And I would agree, he doesn't think they should conflict themselves out. Perhaps they will. But he deliberately put his personal lawyers in there. And I loved the analysis of the poor sap who then ends up with it on his or her lap, because in the end, everyone that seems to have decided against Donald Trump ends up getting fired, thrown out the door, or he basically makes their life miserable.
If he gets this money, do you think that you as a member of the United States Senate will find out about it or will know about it?
I would think so. Things don't seem to keep quiet. We usually find things out. But again, this is just the pattern. Corruption is up, chaos is up, and sadly for the American people, costs are up.
Can I ask you on the government shutdown that's been playing out? One other thing that we talked to the president about today, and we saw a bunch of Senate Republicans over at the White House today, was how this has been dragging on. Nothing has really changed on either front. And the president said today that he's not going to meet with Democrats until the government is reopened. Are there assurances that you could get on the health care subsidies to vote to reopen the government and then negotiate with Republicans?
The president needs to meet with the leaders of Congress. Leader Schumer, Leader Jeffries asked to meet again before he flies off to yet another part of the world. He's been willing to negotiate in the Mideast. He's been willing to negotiate in Asia, but he's not willing to walk down the block and meet with the leaders of Congress. So I think what has changed since the beginning of this is the American people are starting to see the bills. They're starting to see their premiums go up at the same time. Their grocery costs are going up. Their electricity is going up. And these premiums are going to double. November 1st is the date. It's not something that's going to happen in December or January. This is when the marketplace opens for a whole bunch of small businesses, farmers. 75% of the people with Affordable Care Act plans are in states that were won by Donald Trump. These are people that aren't working at big corporations. They're not working for the government. They are people that have these policies and cannot afford in rural America, as one of my soybean farmers told me, between the mess they've made of their markets, between the money going to Argentina that would, by the way, pay for their premiums, all of that happening at once. It's the perfect storm of ugly. That's what the American people are in the middle of while Donald Trump refuses to negotiate and gets on his plane and flies away.
Well, he's going on a trip, a long-planned trip to Asia. It's not just like a vacation.
Well, so he can't meet in these next 2
days.
But
I asked him that today, and I said, would you meet before you go to Asia? Because obviously he'll be gone for several days. But he basically said, I'll meet with them if they reopen the government. We haven't seen any movement from Democrats. Should we expect the government to be reopened by Friday?
I don't know what he's going to do. He's not here, and clearly the rubber stampers that behind closed doors say to us, we really need to do something about these premiums. We know it, we understand it, but they're waiting for his orders. And so that's
Those are
what's
Senate
happening
Republicans
right
who
now.
say that to you
There are
behind
Senate
closed doors?
Republicans that understand. Some people in the House have been very outward about it, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. But others have said it behind closed doors. They understand that these premiums are a problem because, especially in rural states, they're hitting in a big way. So this should be something in every other shutdown. There have been negotiations, there's been compromises, there's been a way to get through it. But he just keeps piling on for people out there. So I just don't think, no matter how many videos he puts up making fun of people and, you know, flying planes with a king's hat on, no matter how much he does that and makes fun of it, people's bills are not funny. When they start getting those premium increases, that's not a joke.
Senator Amy Klobuchar.